Once upon a time, in a lush and vibrant forest, there lived a lion named Leo. He was the undisputed king of the jungle. His majestic mane flowed like golden silk in the sunlight. Leo was intoxicated with his power, ruling over the other animals with an iron paw. His arrogance knew no bounds, and he took pleasure in hunting the wild dogs that roamed the forest, believing they were beneath him. The wild dogs, led by a clever and brave leader named Rani, had long suffered under Leo's tyranny. They were swift and cunning, but Leo's strength and ferocity made them wary of confronting him. However, as time passed, their fear began to transform into anger. They gathered in secret, devising a plan to reclaim their home and stand up to the lion who had terrorized them for far too long. One fateful day, emboldened by their unity, the wild dogs decided it was time to confront Leo. They approached his lair, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and determination. Rani, with her fierce spirit, rallied her pack, reminding them of their strength in numbers. "Together we are stronger than any single beast," she declared, her voice steady and resolute. As they approached, Leo lounged lazily in the sun, basking in his perceived invincibility. He had grown accustomed to the terrified glances and hurried escapes of the forest creatures, and the absence of any challenge had lulled him into a false sense of security. The sight of the wild dogs approaching his den did little to disturb his tranquility. A lazy flick of his tail was his only acknowledgement of their presence. In his mind, these timid canines had always fled at the mere sight of him. Why should this gathering be any different? As if to confirm his suspicions, the wild dogs hesitated at the edge of the clearing, their tails tucked between their legs, their eyes wide with fear. Leo let out a low growl, more a display of dominance than a threat. It was a sound that had struck fear into the hearts of countless animals, a sound that had announced his presence as the apex predator of the jungle. Yet today, it elicited only a whimper of fear from the wild dogs before they scattered into the underbrush. Leo watched them go, a smirk playing on his lips. How predictable, he thought. These creatures of habit, always running, always cowering. What amusement he had derived from their futile attempts to defy him. But this time, something was different. Their fear was tinged with a new emotion, a spark of defiance burning in their eyes as they disappeared into the foliage. Curiosity piqued, Leo decided to investigate. He rose to his paws and began to stalk through the tall grasses, his muscles rippling beneath his tawny coat. He moved with the grace and agility that had made him the terror of the forest, his every step silent and sure. As he followed the trail of the wild dogs, a low growl rumbled in his chest, not a sound of warning, but one of anticipation. He was eager to see how far these brave little creatures would go in their defiance, and then he saw it, a sight that made his blood run cold. The entire pack of wild dogs was gathered in a circle, their gazes fixed on something at the center of the clearing. As Leo watched, hidden in the tall grasses, he saw Rani emerge from the center of the circle. She was the lead dog, the one who had rallied the pack to defy him. She was smaller than the others, but her spirit burned with an intensity that belied her size. She turned to face the forest, her ears pricked, her tail held high, and in that moment, Leo realized that something had changed in the forest. The timid creatures he had ruled with an iron paw were no longer afraid. They were angry, and their anger was focused, their fear transformed into a weapon against him. A sudden surge of adrenaline coursed through Leo, a primal instinct telling him to flee, but he stood his ground, his paws digging into the soft earth. He knew that once the pack made their move, there would be no escape. This was a battle he couldn't win. With a deafening roar, the wild dogs charged. Leo reacted instinctively, launching himself into the air, away from the danger that lurked below. He landed heavily on all four paws, his heart pounding against his ribs. Adrenaline surged through his veins, overriding the panic that threatened to consume him. As the wild dogs closed in, their barks echoing through the forest, Leo knew he was trapped. He lashed out with his claws and teeth, but it was a futile attempt to hold back the tide. There were simply too many of them. The forest floor became a blur of motion as the wild dogs darted around him, their bites and scratches tearing at his flesh. In a desperate attempt to break free, Leo thrashed wildly, knocking the dogs away from him, momentarily creating some space. But the break was short-lived. The wild dogs regrouped, their eyes gleaming with determination, and once again they charged, their collective strength almost tangible. Driven by pain and fear, Leo turned and fled, crashing through the undergrowth, not daring to look back. The forest, once his domain, had become a labyrinth of terror. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sounded like the pursuing footsteps of the wild dogs. His breaths came in ragged gasps, his muscles burning with exertion, but the relentless barking behind him spurred him on. He had to escape, not just for himself, but for the pride that depended on him. With a final burst of speed, Leo burst out of the thicket, collapsing onto the forest floor, his body trembling, his eyes wide with terror. As the wild dogs closed in, their triumphant barks echoing around him, Leo knew it was over. He had lost his home, his dignity, everything. The forest, once his kingdom, was now theirs. The reign of terror was over. The wild dogs surrounded Leo, their gazes intense, their bodies tensed, ready to strike, but instead of the expected attack, a hush fell over the clearing. Leo looked up, his eyes meeting Rani's. Her gaze was unwavering, her expression a mixture of triumph and sorrow. "Why?" Leo rasped, his voice hoarse with exhaustion and fear. He couldn't understand. Why were they hesitating? Wasn't he their enemy? Shouldn't they be attacking him? Rani stepped forward, her eyes blazing with righteous anger. "For our home," she said, her voice echoing the defiance of her pack. "For our freedom." Leo recoiled, realizing the depth of his own arrogance. He had taken their homes, their families, their very survival for granted. He had seen them as lesser beings existing only to be hunted, and now they were here not to kill him, but to judge him for his tyranny, his cruelty, his insatiable lust for power. In their eyes, he saw the collective pain of their species, the terror, the loss, the anger, and in that moment he understood that he didn't just have to fear for his life, he had to fear for his soul. The wild dogs, led by Rani, had come not just to defeat a tyrant, but to teach him a lesson in humility, a lesson he would never forget. They had shown him that true strength lay not in brute force, but in unity, courage, and above all, respect for all living beings. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest floor, Leo knew his fate was sealed. The wild dogs, with their unwavering determination and indomitable spirit, had won. They had reclaimed their home, their freedom, their very essence. And as he looked into Rani's eyes, he saw not just a fierce leader, but a symbol of hope, a beacon of resilience. He had underestimated them, dismissed them as mere prey, and now he was paying the price. But perhaps in his downfall he would find redemption, a recognition of his own humanity, or what remained of it. In the fading light, as the forest creatures emerged from their hiding places, they found Leo gone, vanished, without a trace. The wild dogs had reclaimed the forest, but they hadn't killed Leo. They had spared him, giving him a chance at redemption, for they knew that true strength lay not in vengeance, but in forgiveness, in understanding, and most importantly, in unity. From that day forward, the forest thrived in harmony, a testament to the bravery of those who dared to stand together against tyranny. And so the legend of Rani and her pack spread far and wide, inspiring other creatures to rise against oppression, reminding them that even the mightiest can fall when faced with the strength of unity